Thank you. Thank you. I realize that doesn't completely clear the air, but I think it's kind of good to just take a little break while we're switching discussions. All right, I want to talk to you guys about the inner thigh muscles, which is the muscles that compose your the medial compartment of your femur, your femoral compartment. Miss Routson, hi.
Yes.
Miss
Hi.
Routson, what are the names of your 5 adductor muscles?
Adductor brevis,
Yes.
adductor longus, adductor magnus, gracilis, and pectineus.
Yeah, it's 100% correct. Good job. Cool. Um, which one of those is the longest?
Isn't it the gracilis?
Yeah, it is. I'm really glad you said that. I was really worried you're going to... Yes, it's gracilis. Which one of those crosses over the knee?
Also the gracilis.
Yes. Which one inserts into a location called the pes anserinus?
Also the gracilis.
Good, yeah. I'm normally asking questions, everybody, that are kind of, you know what I mean? I'm trying to make a point with my questions. I'm actually not trying to quiz you, so to speak. Yes, also the gracilis. Cool. Awesome. I don't know why I'm picking on you in particular, but I am. So, which one of those is the absolute biggest? Not the longest, but the biggest. Like the thickest, the mostest.
Adductor
Magnus, yes.
the mostest.
I thought you said Magnus.
Yeah, magnus.
Yes, adductor magnus. Adductor magnus is also the most posterior of all those. Even though they're all between your legs, it's the most posterior. Okay, so posterior that some people from a kinesiology point of view consider the adductor magnus to be also kind of like a hamstring, because it does have some of those qualities. Okay, and I will show this to you on a skeleton what I mean here in just a minute. Okay, let's look at a slide presentation and talk about these guys, and then I'll answer some of the questions on your homework too, because we asked stuff about pelvic tilt that I don't think we've ever talked about before. And so many of you got it wrong, and that's completely fine, because we've never talked about it before. It was kind of like fishing to see what you might put together in there. I think there was a question right in the homework about unilateral tension in all the adductors. What kind of tilt would that create? Yeah, okay, we'll talk about that too. All right, let me share this slide presentation. We can see this gentleman climbing again here. As always, please feel free to ask questions, all that good stuff. This is the back of a leg. Notice that you see the adductor magnus. I know you see the gracilis running down, but the adductor magnus is back there too. All right. Hold on. Let's get this better. Okay. So, please look at the leg on the left-hand side here. It is an anterior view. It means you're looking from the front, right? And I know it's on the left-hand side of the slide, but it's the right leg. Right leg anterior view here. Notice that you essentially, I know you can see a little bit of it, but you essentially cannot see the adductor magnus from the front. This is super important. The adductor magnus is like this, and the 4 other adductors are in front of it like this. The adductor magnus is actually in back. They're all in the middle of the thigh, right? Do we see that? They're all making up the middle of your thigh, but they're layered. And the adductor magnus is more posterior, which is why when you look at the second slide, you can see it. The second slide is a medial view. It's as though you're between somebody's legs and looking at their thigh. I don't even know how you do that, but that's the view. And you can see the adductor magnus back there behind. This is significant because a tight adductor magnus can actually cause a posterior tilt of your, just adductor magnus. That's not the answer to your homework, but it can cause a posterior tilt like the hamstrings can. Yeah? Cool. All right. Let's move right along here. Okay. Did I not give you origin insertions on these? All right. I also want to make one other point here before I talk about more specifics here and show you some taping off of things. But notice the gracilis. It comes from all the way up by your pubic symphysis. It goes down behind the leg and wraps around to your tibia down here, and that's your pes anserinus down there. Does anybody remember the 3 muscles that insert into your pes anserinus to make your pes anserinus? Yes, Miss Mejia, please.
Isn't it the gracilis and the semimembranosus and semitendinosus?
No, I'm so sorry. Gracilis semitendinosus.
I don't know the other one.
Okay. Anybody? Hey,
Sartorius?
Sartorius. Yeah. So, Mr. Blygen, what side of the leg do we find the semitendinosus? As in posterior, anterior, medial, or lateral. Where do we find the semitendinosus?
I was just making sure you could see me. So which side of the leg is a semitendinosus?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be more medial than. Wait, no, hold on.
No.
It's gonna be more lateral.
No, it is more medial. You're right about that. But which side of the leg is it on? I'm not asking the question very well, but like, if you want, which side is the hamstrings on?
The back side.
Cool.
Anterior.
Posterior side.
Posterior.
Which side is the sartorius on?
The anterior side.
Anterior side. Which side is the gracilis on?
The gracilis is on. It starts in the posterior side, right, and goes around to the front.
Yeah, but it's a middle thigh muscle, right? If you rub
it said it was this like on the.
Yeah.
It's the 5th one, right? And it kind of sits on the medial.
Yeah, I'm sorry, by the way,
way.
this is my fault. You're trying to give me really precise answers, and I'm looking for very general ones. Where do you find your adductors?
In the medial part of the thigh.
Thank you. And I apologize to you, sir. I asked the questions very poorly. I was trying to make this point. The pes anserinus is on the medial tibia to provide support to your medial knee, and it takes a muscle from in back and in front and the middle to lock your knee down. And I'll show you that with tape to make better sense of that, okay? But it's really important. Knee stability is a really big deal. So I'm going to stop sharing for a second so there's nothing, I'm not making your screen too small here. Let's see. All right. Got a skeleton here? Let's see. This is the stuff that would be better in person. Bum, bum, bum. There we go. Okay. We got it? Boom. So, your sorry, just lost a ball. Your pes anserinus is on the middle of your leg right below your knee. It's very hard to feel, by the way. It's kind of flat and woven in here, but it feels really sensitive on almost everybody. It feels like you're rubbing bone and it hurts. And let's get this guy up out of our way here. Bear with me. There. And I think I need a darker color tape here. If we take a muscle from in back, a hamstring, right? And it kind of inserts down here. This is the semitendinosus. And we take the gracilis and insert it there. And we take the sartorius and insert it there. Hopefully you can see that these things triangulate down on the inside of the leg. I'm going to do it on me too, because maybe you'll be able to see better. But Oh, let's try that again. There we go. Oh. Sorry, bear with me. So if you see here, I've got a muscle coming from back here, my gracilis coming straight down here, and my sartorius coming over here, and they all come together. This is my pes anserinus. And it keeps my knee from breaking in. Yeah? So yes, Ms. Routson, please.
So is the pes anseritis its own muscle or just this junction of these three muscles coming together?
Thank you for making me a better teacher. It's the junction of these three muscles coming together that got a name. And what they're saying,
Okay.
pes anseritis means goosefoot. And what they're saying
that's
is
right. Okay.
down here, it looks like a little goosefoot, the like 3 fingers coming up. And all it is where the 3 tendons insert in the inside of your leg here. So the pes anserinus, you're right, is a fancy intersection where 3 muscles attach and somebody named it. I'm making a big deal out of it because knees do really good doing flexion and extension. They have a really hard time with lateral and medial forces. Any of you that watch sports know that somebody's running this way, cuts left or right, and then their knee goes. And it's because of the lateral and medial forces. What protects, this is not the pes anserinus, what protects your knee from blowing out laterally?
IT band?
Yes. Yes. So with a thing like this, you've got an IT band going down. The IT band crosses over your knee. What tenses up the IT band?
Tenses up.
Yeah, what makes the IT band tighter? What's a muscle that's designed to make the IT band tighter?
Tensor fascia lata.
Yeah, and its job literally is to tighten up when I'm about to cut so that my knee doesn't blow out this way. It actually tightens this area up so that my knee doesn't pop out this way. The pes anserinus and the sartorius, gracilis, and semitendinosus help my knee not blow out this way. My knee does great doing this. It does not like this. And so your body's got some very clever mechanisms to deal with that. And the IT band is one of the things that helps you laterally, which is, by the way it usually blows out is laterally. So the IT band's even more important. But I bring all this up to you because you guys might work on knee problems. And these are common areas that are tight that people don't think about. They just don't quite put it all together. They think knee problems, they think, well, quads and hamstrings. Your quads and hamstrings are your powerful flexors and extensors of your knee. They move your knee, but they have very little to do with your knee stability. And so your knee stability comes from an IT band on one side and the coming together of 3 triangulated muscles from the front, middle, and back, creating the pes anserinus, which is just a location where 3 tendons come together on the shaft of your tibia below your knee. Yes, Miss Mejia, please.
Would you mind repeating like what each one is, like which one's the front, the middle, and the back stability?
Yeah, no, I don't mind repeating it all. So from the back, the hamstring of the semitendinosus inserts into this area. By the way, this area is your tibia. It's just below your knee on the medial side, but it inserts in this area we call the pes anserinus. But we call it the pes anserinus because it's these 3 muscles coming together. So semitendinosus. Then from your medial adductor group comes the gracilis. And it's got to be the gracilis because that's the only adductor that crosses over the knee. And then from the front, it comes from no group. It comes from something called the sartorius. It comes from the front, goes diagonal across your leg, and hooks in there too. It can't come from the quads that are in front because the quads all insert where?
Linea aspera or below the kneecap, something like that.
Yeah, they all insert into the kneecap, which then inserts into the tibial tuberosity. Yeah, and I just try to make a point. That's how I kind of remember it, Miss Mejia. That's why I was saying that. Is I remember the quads all come down and eventually streamline down into your knee. That's why our legs don't look fat at the bottom. They look fat at the top. They go down because the quads all come down and converge into the kneecap and go into your tibia. But there is a muscle in front on top of all the quads, and that's the sartorius. And so that comes from the front, goes in the pes anserinus, gracilis comes from the middle, goes in the pes anserinus, and semitendinosus comes from the back from the hamstrings and goes in the pes anserinus. And those would not be crazy muscles to massage if somebody was having knee problems or their knees were tight. You know? Somebody like Ibarra. Ibarra has lots of knee problems. That's a thought, yeah. So, and the significance, because we're now getting into structural anatomy. So when you guys first started, everything was about, can you name the 3 calves? Can you name the 4 quads? Can you, right? But now we're talking about, who cares? Like, why are we naming these? Why are they important? And we're even trying to go past that, which is in the beginning, we're like, well, you know, my biceps brachii lets me do a flexion of my elbow. That's really good. But we're starting to learn like, oh my gosh, it goes across the shoulder and it can cause shoulder problems. And that's what I'm trying to do here, is say, what's the real significance of these guys? Yeah. At the bare minimum, by the way, when you graduate, at the bare minimum, you should know where the adductors are. So when your hands on them, you're like, I'm at least on these 5 muscles. You will still know, just knowing that, you'll know more than most massage therapists. But we'd like to take it further than that if we can. So that's the significance of that. Cool. Awesome. All right. So, let's talk about the biggest one of these guys. We'll come back. Sorry, I literally can't move. I've got tape all over me. All right. So let me reshare. So I'm sharing a picture of the adductor magnus. This is not the longest adductor, but it sure is the biggest, by far. It's powerful. And the reason that it looks the way it does right now, by the way, is there are no other adductors in this picture, right? Otherwise, you would not be able to see it from the front. And right now, you can see it from the front because they've removed the other 5 adductors. But basically, when you guys are rubbing the back of somebody's leg towards their middle thigh, you're hitting the adductor magnus. Basically, when you're rubbing the front of somebody's thigh towards the middle thigh, you're rubbing the other 5 adductors and the quads and all the other stuff. I mean, I get that. Does you understand what I'm saying? Okay. So, let me point out some interesting things about the adductor, and so we can kind of understand what your book says. Let's see here. Hey, wait, why don't they have, I'm so sorry. Bear with me 1 second. Why don't they have medial rotate hip joint? The hip joint. I don't know. Oh, good. Okay. I'm sorry. I thought your book and I disagreed for a second, but we don't. Okay. So let's talk about where the adductor magnus actually attaches to your body, because it explains a whole lot of other stuff, and this gets in very technical into hip anatomy. All right, so this is our hip. How many bones make up our hip? Yes. So Miss Mejia, what are those 3 bones?
The ilium, the ischium, and the pubis.
Okay. So, let's unscrew this too to make a point. When you guys were younger, your ilium, ischium, and pubis were actually connected by cartilage. I hate to tell you at the age all of you are, they're probably all completely fused. But believe it or not, this ilium used to be, and it made up part of this hole here, this whole bone used to be connected to cartilage to this whole bone and this whole bone. Ilium, ischium that you sit on, your ischium is in your tuchium, and your pubis, right? That's why we call this area the pubic region. Ilium, ischium, pubis. They all joined here and make this acetabulum, which is where your femur goes into, but they all formed here and solidified later in life. They work when they're not. They work when they're connected by cartilage, but it gives more flexibility to your hips. As you get older, they fuse together, which is actually a big advantage because you can carry more weight. It's an advantage, by the way, when you're younger and they're not all fused together because you can take more impact and do more stupid stuff, which is how we all survived childhood. So, anyway, these come together. Well, they want to describe places along this area down here. And so you will hear them say, this is the pubis here, right here, kind of represented by my two fingers. And they're going to talk to you in your book about the ramus or the rami of the pubis and the ramus of the ischium. Ramus means arm, and they don't mean arm. They mean, hey, there's this bone here that seems to have two arms. There's a superior arm of the pubis and an inferior arm of the pubis. And there's an arm of the ramus. And they come together, I don't know if I can balance this, they come together to make this whole. So this whole is made up by the superior arm of the pubis, meeting the ilium, the inferior arm of the pubis, meeting the arm of the ischium, and the ischium meets the ilium up here. So that's how they talk about this. So this bottom hole here, which we would just call a bone, is the inferior arm of the pubis and the arm of the ischium coming together, because they used to not be fused here. So that's how they describe stuff. So if you look at the origins of the adductor magnus, it's the inferior ramus of the pubis, the ramus of the ischium, and the ischial tuberosity, which is all this bumpiness. So what are they saying? They're saying this muscle, this adductor magnus, literally starts back here where your hamstrings start and runs all the way up to where your pubis starts. It's that wide up there. It's huge. So you've got lots of attachments here. And then they run down and insert in your leg, and I'll explain that in a second. But just think about this for a second, just the adductor magnus. The back fibers of the adductor magnus, if they get tight, they can create what kind of tilt of your pelvis?
Posterior.
What?
Posterior.
Posterior. And the front fibers of your adductor magnus, if they get tight, what could they cause? Anybody?
Anterior.
Anterior tilt. Yep, because they're pulling down on the front, causing anterior tilt. So the adductor magnus is really weird. Its main job is to pull your legs together, right? And that's super duper helpful. But because it's so massive, the front fibers can actually help you with a hip flexion. They can actually help, which is also an anterior tilt. They can actually also help lift your leg forward. The posterior fibers can also help pull your leg back, because eventually they go down and connect to that leg. That's not their main job. It's not their main job, but it can happen. Okay? So, yes, please, Ms. Routson.
I'm so sorry.
Why?
Can you just say that one more time about the anterior tilt? So you were just, I get the part that it's wide at the top and where it touches. I just missed the part about it pulling it anteriorly. Is it the different portion of where it's attaching to the pelvis?
Yes. So let me show you. I know that we were given a muscle, and they named that muscle the adductor magnus. We didn't choose that. That's what they gave us, right? But the adductor magnus is huge. And muscles, even though they're all by one name, that was somebody like me that came along and gave them one name. That doesn't mean they operate that way in the body. We didn't know how the adductor magnus operated when we discovered it. It actually operates like multiple different muscles, and your brain is smart enough that it can actually turn on just the front fibers, just the back fibers, some of the front fibers, all the fibers, 2 of the middle fibers, 40,000 of the back fibers. It can do whatever it wants. And this is a side view of your hips. And if you grab onto the front up here by the pubic and pull, you start to anteriorly tilt. If you grab onto the back like the hamstrings or the back fibers of the adductor magnus, which are way back here, you start to cause a posterior tilt. They start to pull your hips back that way. So the point is that the adductor magnus alone can cause posterior and anterior tilts. Did that help?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that's what I understood.
Yes.
Perfect.
And by the way, the adductor magnus, I just told you about where its origin is. It's going to go down the leg, which means it can actually, when it grabs on the leg, the front fibers can cause your leg to do a flexion, and the back fibers can cause your leg to do a little bit of extension. Right? So the front fibers can be like a hip flexor, and the back fibers can be like, a hip extender. Not kind of like they are. Cool. So I just want you to get an idea of how big the adductor magnus is, and that it's probably something you would work on anybody with an exaggerated tilt either direction. Right? Because tight fibers in there can mess with the hips. The other thing to notice is, let's talk about where it inserts. It inserts into the medial lip of the linea aspera, which is on your femur, and then it skips over. It goes on hiatus. That's what the word means. It's on vacation. And then part of it, as you'll notice, goes all the way down to a little tubercle on the inside of above the knee called the adductor tubercle. It's just a bump on the inside of the leg. The adductor hiatus is there for a reason. Nothing that we need to concern ourselves with, but it's literally there for veins and nerves to get from the front of your leg to the back of your leg, and from the back of your leg to your front of your leg. You guys are so packed full of stuff that there's not space inside a body, and you need holes to get from one area to another, and we've got all sorts of hiatuses. You've got one in your diaphragm to let your big artery that runs down there. I don't know why I'm having a problem with this, but your inferior vena cava and your abdominal aorta and stuff run through your diaphragm, and there's a hiatus in there to let them through. Yes, Miss Mejia.
You know how you were saying yesterday that sometimes the sciatic nerve can go through the piriformis?
Yes. For some people, it's actually in the. Yeah, it's kind of
Is that not for like veins though? Because I know that muscles like have like the blood in them, like that's what helps the contractions and stuff. But it's not the venous return blood going back, and that way there's that hole. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. No, that hole. I mean, I honestly don't remember what goes right through the hole, but there are veins and arteries and nerves go through that hole, and it's so they don't get pinched that there's a hole there.
Okay.
Are you asking, I almost felt like you were about to ask, can those veins and arteries accidentally run through a muscle?
Well, that's kind of what I was asking, but I don't think you understood me, and I didn't want to take up any more time.
Well, apparently I did. I have heard of situations like that, but I don't know if, I've never felt it. Like, I wasn't like, oh, and I've never felt like, oh, your sciatic nerve runs through your piriformis. I've seen pictures of it in biopsies, in autopsies. So I've actually seen it, but it wasn't live. I've never felt it. I don't know that you can actually feel it. But the point they were trying to make was, in those situations, these people have harder times with pinched nerves because they're actually running through the muscle, which is not how they're supposed to go. In general, the veins and arteries do not run through the muscle. It's little capillaries that come down to the muscle, and there's nothing running right through it. Yeah. Okay. But I will tell you this, by the way, veins, arteries, and nerves like to run together. Mm-hmm. So just like when we lay pipe underneath the street, we lay the cable, we lay the pipe, we put it all in the same trench. Your body's the same way. It tries to run them all in the same trench. And that's what that hiatus is there for.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So that's adductor magnus, super important. In back, it can pull you back, right? In front, it can pull me front. So it can create tilts of my pelvis, but it also can, even though my hamstrings help to bring my leg back, my mirror fibers of my adductor magnus help to extend my leg. My front fibers of my adductor magnus, even though it's not their main job, help to flex my leg. And that's why they cause those tilts. So I'm telling you all this because if somebody comes to you from the gym, and you will get lots of clients like this, and they're like, my quads are sore from doing squats, you'll rub their quads. And they'll feel great, and they'll love you. And you need to be a good rubber to do that. Like that is a skill. That's a really important skill. But it's not a problem-solving skill. I also want you to have the skill when somebody comes in and you're like, wow, it seems like their butt's sticking way out behind them, and maybe they're anteriorly tilted. And you're not just thinking hip flexors, you're like, oh my gosh, it could even be stuff between their leg, because I remember that thing about the adductor magnus. That's why I'm telling you this kind of stuff, is to solve the more tricky stuff, right? The other thing I want you guys to think about is that all your adductors can, to some extent, medially rotate your leg. Okay, see some nods. Remember, medially rotate means my feet turn in. Just remember, my feet are not turning in because my feet are turning in. My feet are turning in because my hips are rolling in. My leg, my femur is rolling in, okay? Anyway, think what happens when your adductors are tight and they medially rotate you too much. Watch what happens to me. Let me give you a better view. Sorry, guys. So, if I put my feet straight out, I tend to get very straight up. When they medially rotate, it tends to make your butt stick out. You tend to get pigeon-toed and kind of walk like this. So, just being heavily medially rotated can cause you to have that anterior tilt too. So adductors can affect tilts of all kinds. Yes, Ms. Sarno, please.
Hi, sometimes I see the leg just and the knee just twist out like a
Yes.
walk and that they
Yes.
just go this way.
We call it bow-legged. Yeah, the knees,
Yeah.
they're like they're riding a horse.
Yeah, and just go this way.
Yeah.
And what it like a the ten fascia that
Tensor fascia lata. We think it's a weakness in the IT band, yes. Yeah.
that caused the problem or not?
It can cause the problem. The reason I'm saying can is some people are just kind of born that way, like that's the structure of their body. But yes, what's happened is that if the IT band is weak, the knees want to kind of bulge out to the side. You're right. And then they learn to walk that way. And they kind of walk that way and they get kind of used to
Like
it.
a back walking.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, but you're absolutely right. If it was a massage problem to solve, I would look at the tensor fascia lata and the gluteus maximus, because they both come together into the IT band. And I'd look at the whole IT band too. Yeah. Although I want to say for a lot of bully people, it's actually weakness in that area. And so sometimes what they need is physical therapy to help with it, actually strengthen the area.
And sometimes on the tibia and tibia like a tight on the knee on the anterior tibia.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's I think it's tight on everybody's, and it ties into the IT band. You're right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. IT bands tend to go all the way down across the leg and kind of get into the fascia of the anterior tibialis, which we haven't gotten to yet, but we're going to. Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Tufson.
Hold on 1 second, sir. Miss Walker, you raised your hand. Miss Walker T.
Yeah. Is it always when we have tight muscles in one spot and it's stretching the antagonist, right? Why is it that those muscles get so weak? Does your brain kind of stop using them in some ways and just trying to use the tight muscles all the time?
I don't know that I've experienced that they always do get weak.
Well, when I've been reading up on stuff and my physical therapist told me, like, and when I was reading up, trying to research stuff about what I saw in my husband's postural analysis, he had a forward head. So they said, you know, the muscles in the front would be tight and then it would lengthen all the, so the neck extensors would be lengthened kind of like the whole time because the neck is forward, and that they would get weak and that you would need to stretch the front and tighten the back. So it just seems like a lot of stuff I've read talk about like those muscles that are in that lengthened position are weak and they need to be strengthened.
I do. All right. For one thing, by the way, I'm not sure if they're correct about the analysis, but because believe it or not, this protracting here sometimes involves a tightening up back here as I protract. Like it needs, as I protract, I need these neck muscles to actually tighten and shorten to do that. So I don't know that I completely agree with what's going on there, but you're right. I actually think massage and physical therapy go very well together because usually what we want to do is loosen up the tight muscles and have somebody strengthen the weak muscles. It's not. They do get weaker in that sense. You're right. They get weaker from lack of use. Right. The muscles that are tight are always tight. They're always working, and the muscles that are loose and have been stretched out are not being used. Right. So if my head, just a stupid example, but if my head is perfectly balanced here, both these muscles kind of get some work keeping it that way. If my head's always over this way, these muscles are always getting a workout, and these guys are always relaxed. They never get a workout. And the same thing is true with front and back, right? So I think what you're seeing is when somebody's really tight and back, their front muscles don't do anything because they're leaning over like this. Their back muscles are trying to hold them up, and there's nothing in front doing anything.
Okay.
And that might be why you're seeing some weakness occur because they're literally not getting used. And so
Well, and then do our bodies sometimes, when we're constantly in like a bad position or whatever, do our bodies sometimes like bypass the muscles
yeah, I like how
that
you're
are
thinking.
constantly not getting used? And so then when we go to do a movement, the right muscles aren't firing anyways because our bodies bypassed them.
I think so. Yes, you're contemplating really deep stuff that's a little bit out of my level, but let me try to answer what I know. Usually when there's slight imbalances, your body tries to keep you in good posture. So my front neck muscles get tight, my back neck muscles get tight, trying to pull my head back. You know, they argue a little bit and trying to get my head back in position. That's kind of good because at least they're both getting a workout. They're both back in position. If they stay forward a really long time, let's say the back ones get a really big workout because now they've got a head way out over here. The front ones start to get weak. Your body does some bypassing in a much more dangerous way, really. If my head, for example, is forward for a long time, these muscles do get quite a workout, but they also get exhausted and start to give up. And what your body actually does is it starts building up extra fascia back there. And that's why you see really big humps on some people's C7 area. Some people call it a dowager's hump. Don't tell your clients that. They feel terrible if they think they're the hunchback from Notre Dame kind of thing. But many of us have a little bit of one. That's normal. But anyway, that's from stress building up. Anyway, your body starts to go, we can't hold the head up anymore. We're going to actually grow more fascia there, more tendon and ligament type stuff because the muscles can no longer be expected to hold that up. Bypassing, I don't know if I fully I mean, I see where you're going with this. I don't know about that, but I will tell you what happens after a long time is they call it, they call it functional adaptation. And your body starts to go, well, this is the way we're going to do it. And it learns new ways to deal with the crappy posture you've now developed. And in that sense, it bypasses stuff, right? It tries to learn a new system, just like we do in our lives. Just like if you lost the keys to your front door but only had them to your back door, you try to fix it in the beginning, but then maybe after a while you just get used to walking in the back door of your house every day. And bodies do that too. So you'll see people that have adapted their whole body to this hunched over lifestyle. And part of our job is actually to get them straight again so that those other muscles have to kick back in again and start learning new patterns. So I do agree that we learn bad habits. And that's about as much as I know.
Okay.
I love what you're thinking about.
It sounds like from what you say, that's why why it would be a good idea to know what exercises or, what strengthens those specific muscles so that when you're doing something, the body can't use those muscles it's decided to try to activate instead. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
Exactly. Yes, that is correct. And let me throw in one other thing too that I didn't mention. Sometimes we also get not just muscle weakness from lack of used muscles, but muscle shortening. So they just lose flexibility then too. So then we're going back and the person can't even get into good posture, not because of weakness, but literally because there's just shortened muscles that won't allow them to kind of get back in that posture. We're just trying to open them back up so that they can get back in there. You're right, because they've completely unlearned that. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of massage therapists with their clients, if they're really into structural stuff, they just check all their range of motion. They're like, well, you should be able to turn, you know, these ways. You should be able to lift your arm up above your head. And any place they find they can't do that, they start working on those muscles until they can get them back to where they can fully operate the way they should, because then the body usually kicks back in. Like if you allow it to do what it wants, it'll do the right thing. It's literally adapting because it's like, I can't stand up straight. So what am I going to do? I'm going to do this other stuff. You know, just like you may have done if you ever were in a cast temporarily or something. Yeah. That's it. That's all I got. All right. So, hip adductors, their job is to adduct your hips to pull them together. And believe it or not, you do that when you do a squat to get your back up on the ground. But from a postural point of view, they can create bilaterally, they can create anterior posterior tilt. What do they create unilaterally?
Unilateral tilt.
Yeah, that's right. I like that. I don't know if I've ever called it unilateral tilt, but a lateral tilt or a lateral elevation. Let me be very clear what he means, everybody. If these are your hips, you've got adductors over here, you've got adductors over here. If only one side pulls, you actually get lateral tilts, or some people call them lateral elevations because one side of your hip goes up. So, we are not talking anterior anymore. We're not in Kansas anymore. We're talking about one side. This is a lateral elevation or a lateral tilt. And that comes from my adductors getting tight on one side. So, for my right side to go up, which adductors have to be tight? Which side?
Left side?
Strangely, it's probably the right side. Because if you think about it, as I go up, it's as though this leg is adducting even more. This leg is actually abducting over here. It's starting, look at, that's actually an abduction of this leg. It's going out. I know I'm going out here, but this is the same as this. I'm adducted over here, abducted over here. I'm adducted over here. It's even more adducted. That's what's getting this hip up. So your adductors unilaterally elevate that same hip if they're tight. And you will get clients that are laterally elevated or laterally tilted. Yes, Ms. Mejia.
Couldn't that also kind of present if someone has scoliosis because they have the lateral spine curvature?
Yeah, I wouldn't even say kind of, it usually does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a functional adaptation, right? They were born with this back like this, and now the back's not engaging the hips evenly, and they probably have permanently shortened adductors on one side and longer on the other side to kind of try to compensate for this spine that's coming down. Yeah, that's really good.
But that's not a thing that they're born with, right? It's a development thing, like their spine grows that way.
Well, they're born with it. I mean, it continues to grow that way, but it's usually something they are born with. Yeah.
Okay.
Some people think they can correct it to some degree. Some chiropractors can. I've seen mixed results with that, but it is a born thing. It's not something you develop through, bad habits or something. Yeah, they're born with it. Yeah. We also see elevated lateral tilts on a group of people that I really admire, but a group of people that like to carry something around here a lot. We see it in mothers. Mothers that have carried 4 children on this hip. And you moms know, this is your life. You're walking around with this hip elevated to hold this kid up. you know, and they want to be carried when they're, 37 years old still. So like they get heavy after a while. Anyway, and so we'll see that that's actually fairly easy to solve. That's not usually permanent, and rubbing their adductors really helps kind of get their hips back, and then you have to work their back too, right? Because usually there's tight QLs too, right? Quadratus lumborum on one side only, usually on the elevated side, right? And so we work all that stuff, and moms really appreciate that. But you'll actually see that, and that's a temporary functional adaptation from carrying around a child while you're trying to cook dinner, drive a car, go to work, go to school, take care of your friends, take care of other people, talk about taking care of yourself, but never actually get to it, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Miss Sarno.
Yeah, and when adductor get tight and with the hip up, and sometimes if they heel on the people, sometimes like they tilt a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes you can put their legs together and they don't match. One heel's
Yeah,
higher.
they don't match.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
They
very true.
cut from the hip to the feet too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Couldn't agree more. Yeah. It'll actually change their leg. It will seemingly change their leg length. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And by the way, everybody, lots of people have a small difference in their legs that they're born with, and the adductors will compensate for that a little bit, but we're talking fairly significant. Yep, you'll see it. You're absolutely right. So, the adductor magnus can control anterior and posterior tilt. All the adductors can actually have an effect on lateral tilt. So these inner thigh muscles are extremely important, and it's funny, we don't think about them a lot as massage therapists, we don't think a lot of them when we're in the gym. Everybody always wants to work their glutes or their quads or whatever, but it's actually the adductors that are actually the thing that helps you get out of a squat. It's where a lot of your leg power comes from. A lot of your inner knee stability comes from them, and a lot of your pelvic alignment comes from them. So I'm trying to impress with you the importance of all that. Yeah. Okay. So that's all the adductors in a way, but that was adductor magnus. And some of the things to remember about all the adductors. And don't forget about the medial rotation. When the feet come in, you lose space and your butt goes out. And when my butt goes out, I'm now anteriorly tilted, and I've got all the problems I've talked to you guys about so far. So now anterior tilts can come from adductor magnus, rectus femoris, tensor fascia lata, gluteus minimus, front fibers of gluteus medius, sartorius. Yeah, those are good starts right there. Cool. All right. Let's go on and look at other stuff. This is adductor magnus. Where's my other ones? Okay. Don't they have? Okay, let's talk about the gracilis. The gracilis, where's my slide on the gracilis? Hold on. Oh, here we go. Good. The gracilis attaches to the inferior ramus of the pubis. I don't really care if you remember the inferior ramus of the pubis, but remember pubis, because the gracilis is actually up front, right? So it can actually have a little bit of effect on anterior tilts as well. But what's really important is it inserts into the proximal medial shaft of the tibia. Can somebody explain to me what proximal medial shaft of tibia means?
I can. Can I?
Please, hit me.
Okay, so the proximal medial shaft of the tibia means that it's the closest to the center, right? Or to your
closest to my core. Yes.
Okay, core.
Yeah.
And it's medial, so that means it's in the center of the tibia.
Yeah. Did you say the inside? Is that what you said?
The inside, yeah.
Yeah.
Medial, right?
Thank you, sir. That's exactly what I was looking for. I was looking for, like, in English. What does this mean? So.
Okay. Good.
This is a knee. This is your knee. This is your femur. It's going way up here. There's a pelvis up here somewhere. This is your tibia. There's a foot way down here. This is the medial side. It's roughly right here. It's roughly below the proximal end of your tibia is the end closest to your body, not closest to your foot. And it's medial, like Mr. Tate said. It's right in here. And it's very hard to feel, actually. It's actually very hard to feel, except that it feels painful. When you rub in here, you'll feel this spot below your knee, right here, and that's where the sartorius is coming down, the semitendinosus, and the gracilis are all coming down to meet here to protect the inside of the knee. Remember, the outside of the knee is being protected by the tensor fascia lata and the IT band that's going down across, all the way across here, and protecting it. And that's what protects this thing, because it does not like side-to-side movement. People are always tearing these ligaments, these collateral ligaments they're called. They're on both sides protecting the knee. Knees do great with this. They're great at this all day long, flexion extension, but they do not like wobbling back and forth at all. I'm pausing because, well, let me at least briefly go over the other ones. Pectineus, which is really small, is also up front. It attaches to the superior ramus of the pubis. So it's way up front. It's not down here even, it's all the way up here, and it goes over the leg. Right? It's way up high. You'll barely hit it when you're doing kind of inner leg work. You can. If somebody's draped well, you can totally work it, but it's way up here. And then you've got an adductor brevis, which is underneath, kind of underneath here, going down the leg. And your adductor longus, by the way, which also hooks up here to what are called your pubic tubercles. There are, you can't see them here, but there are tiny bumps right by the pubic symphysis that are called your pubic tubercles. I'm not trying to be inappropriate, but I had a student call them pubic testicles to help her remember, because there's two little bumps here. And so these pubic tubercles right here is where the adductor longus attaches and then goes over to the thigh too. And all this stuff essentially attaches to your femur, right? Cool. All right, so let's recap some stuff. Yes? Yes. Mr. Tate, good sir.
Yes.
What are the 5 adductor muscles?
The 5 adductor muscles are the adductor magnus, the adductor brevis, the adductor longus, the pectineus, and the gracilis.
Say it.
Gracilis.
Gracilis, yes.
Gracilis, okay, yeah.
Which one of those is the most massive? I mean, if you put it on a scale, would weigh the most?
The adductor magnus.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Which one is usually found most posterior?
Adductor magnus.
Yes. Which one can both flex and extend the hip depending on which fibers we're talking about?
Flex and extend the hip. Can I say the adductor magnus again?
I wish you would.
Then the adductor magnus.
Thank you, sir. Which one can cause both an anterior and posterior tilt depending on the fibers? Sir.
Hold on. Is that the gracilis?
Sir, there's a theme here.
Okay, the adductor magnus.
Thank you, sir. It's so big, so there's fibers in front and back, so it can pull in front and back. Cool. Last question, sir. Which is the longest adductor muscle?
It's not the adductor magnus, is it?
No. Yep, this
Okay,
is
good.
different.
Okay, it's the I want to say the pectineus. No, okay, it's the adductor. It's not the longest.
That's right. It's not the longest. You're right.
Okay, so this pectineus, gracilis, the adductor. I'm missing one.
It's all right. Well, you've got them all. So we decided it's not
Yeah.
the magnus, right? And we decided
Right.
it's not the pectineus, and we decided it's not the longest. So it's
Right,
either
it's not the brevis.
so it's
I'm
not the
missing one.
brevis. So what's
I'm
the last
missing
one?
one.
You want to say them all again?
I'm gonna have to.
Please.
So the adductor magnus, the adductor, the longus, the gracilis, the pectineus, the adductor brevis. It's the shortest one.
It's the shortest,
So-
but I want to know the longest. The
I-
longest one.
Is it the gracilis? No, it's not. Is it the gracilis?
The gracilis, sir, it is.
Is
Gracilis.
it? Oh
yes.
shit.
Yeah. I know everything gets jumbled in our heads, but you're doing great. That was fantastic. Thank you, sir.
It really did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, everybody. I want to release homework because I don't want you stuck with lots of homework tonight. I've thrown a lot of stuff at you today, not just learning, but lots of change and all that kind of stuff. We need to breathe. Yes. So what you have is you have 2 pieces of homework. A 23-question test on the adductors and matching for massage therapy chapter 14, clinical massage, is the matching for the back of the chapter. And that's what Mr. Ibarra is going to teach tomorrow. And he asked you all to have your books while you're in class. He said you might be referring to them. I'm like, I'm sure they will because they're at home. But yeah, somebody just make a face. Anyway, you got those 2 tests right now. I'm here, all that good stuff. Okay, and I'll check back in.